So if I'm Javier Milei, I'm the president of Argentina, do I approve of a non-post edited version of myself speaking at a high profile event and having the thing lip synced? And welcome everyone back to SlaterPod. Hi, Esther.
Hi, Florian.
Another busy week, just at the start of the year. So let's unpack. So we're going to look at these translation GPTs again, what we found in the last week. Look at the acceptance of lip-synced AI translation, rising and rising and rising. And then you're going to tell us more about how M&A is back in force in 2024. SlaterCon Remote's happening soon, and you have a chance to get your early bird tickets. Actually, it's super early bird, but we're going to end that sale soon, so go get your tickets at the super early bird price. And big announcement, SlaterCon in person, IRL, is back in your neck of the woods, Esther, on May 23rd.
In London. Yeah, super excited.
In London, I'm excited too. Great hotel, the Nobu Hotel. Big setup. So make sure to save the date, May 23rd on a Thursday, perfect day of the week. You can fly in, you can enjoy London on the Friday, meet some customers there, meet some clients, and then fly back to wherever you are based or stay in London. Of course, London's a big hub for localization as well. Now, have you had a chance to dig a bit more into the translation GPT thing on the OpenAI store?
Yeah, after our podcast, I did have a bit of a dig around. I saw the phrase GPT, and a few others.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick update. We're not going to try to screen share anymore because we attempted it this morning, and OpenAI store generally, it's still a little buggy. It's still a bit slow. So just want to share a few more findings. So first, it's really super easy to build one of those GPTs. We just did one for another purpose, like an internal purpose. We bought the team subscription, etc. And then, one of the team members bought a quick GPT for an internal use case. So really easy to build. Now, I don't think we answered a question about payment last time. So when you do launch that GPT and you want to make money from it, I think currently OpenAI says it's limited to users in the US or US builders will be paid based on what they call user engagement with their GPTs. Now, what is user engagement? Probably the amount of chats, actual chats. And if you, like how many people have actually chatted with your GPT. And now, actually last time you mentioned it's a YouTube type model. And then I've kind of blurted out.
You said App Store.
More the App Store. But the more I think about it, the more I think you're right.
I think so too.
Yeah, you were right.
No, because you were talking about, creators, and rather than developers. And I think obviously when you're thinking that way, it is more aligned to the YouTube model. And the fact that it's not expert contributors, and the payment model as well.
Yeah, I mean, the payment model, definitely, right? I mean, it's way more YouTube because it's usage-based. So, if 1 million people constantly use your GPT, then you're going to get more money from OpenAI. It's not like it's a one-time download like on the App Store. So, yeah, you were right. I was wrong. Let's move on quickly. And so now for most of these GPTs have like 100 or more chats, so not much yet, including the one by phrase. So when we're kind of typing in, translation localization into that search box, there's most of these GPTs have like, 100 plus. It says like 100 plus chats. So there's like a chat symbol and then 100 plus next to it. There's some more like a Chinese Fanyi translation app. They have like 1K, so 1,000 chats, but it's still very, very, very small numbers, right?
But you can imagine that being used as a metric like views or subscribers, as more like a reliability thing. So are you going to go and open a random one that's only got 10 chats, or are you going to go and open a GPT that's got 1 million eventually, however many months or years down the line?
100%. So basically the usage is still super low. If you have 100 plus, then it's very little. Now, what you mentioned before is actually quite important. how do you find the GPT? And that's from a user interface. It's terrible at the moment. So you have a search box, you type, and then there's a drop down that's coming down. There's no way to like hit enter and get all of the translation GPTs or all of the localization GPTs. And the drop down is limited to like maybe a dozen GPTs. So what happens if there are 100 translation GPTs and it just serves you a dozen?
Yeah, how is it choosing which ones to serve up?
Correct. So that's something they'll have to figure out. Obviously, in the grander scheme of things, that's probably relatively low on their list of things. But if they want to have greater adoption of this, they need a much better way to search, right? Because, yeah, I mean, if you type in translation on YouTube, you're not only getting 10 videos served, and then you can pick among these 10. You can obviously go way deeper than that. All right, so that was about those translation GPTs. I mean, go, and punch in any other key term. I mean, dubbing, subtitling, localization, anything. There's some GPTs for any of this. Now, just before the podcast, I noticed that David Sachs, investor, and one of the hosts of the All In podcast, one of the biggest kind of tech current affairs podcasts in the world, he tweeted out about, again, HeyGen, and about Javier Milei's speech at the World Economic Forum happening right now here in Davos, Switzerland. And so Milei, is the new kind of anarcho-capitalist, super libertarian president of Argentina. And a lot of people were waiting for his speech in Davos. And he gave it in Spanish, and there was, simultaneous interpreting, etc. So when you go on the World Economic Forum's website, the options are like, of course, original Spanish, but then basically the simultaneous interpreter on top if you want to have English, French, etc. But now David Sachs, again, that investor/podcaster, tweeted out, hey, the best way to listen to the Milei speech in English is rendered using HeyGen in his own voice. And so, of course, I click, I go. Pretty easy. Really well translated, gotta say. I mean, I listened to it for like a couple of minutes, no in-depth linguistic analysis, of course. The voice somewhat monotonous, quite easy to follow, but actually, sorry to say, easier than listening to the live simultaneous interpreter. I know this is blasphemy, but I really think it is. Now, who knows if HeyGen post-edited this, but even if, this is probably going forward one of the ways to listen to this type of content, right? It's lip synced, right? Now, the question is always, what does the speaker say about this? So if I'm Javier Milei, I'm the president of Argentina, do I approve of a non-post edited version of myself speaking at a high profile event and having the thing lip synced? I don't know. I guess I wouldn't. So like, it's quite the gray zone there. I mean, it's a president. He's giving an important speech. Not sure. So at this point in time, it feels a bit in the gray zone of what a speaker would approve.
Those kind of speeches, they're a fair game, public, recorded in a public forum. We've had all of this splicing and dicing of politicians' speeches. They splice them and dice them into songs and things like that. So I think a translation or recording in English is probably more along the lines of what you might expect. Fair usage, I'd say.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack. Of course, on the one hand, I mean, they should be, in a sense, happy that their signal gets amplified even more. But what if it's actually wrong? I mean, you could see a world where, maybe it's not Spanish, English, super high resource. And the type of speech Milei gave, I would say, is relatively, it's extremely data rich. I mean, it's mostly economics, it's politics. There's a huge corpus of available data on this. So I would assume the translation is quite good without post-editing. What if it's a slightly lower resource language? It's a more complicated topic, and it's a super sensitive subject matter. right? So you could have a video go viral of some president saying something that's literally the polar opposite of what they intended to say.
I think there's a duty for the person or people who are translating and putting the content out that it is accurate.
But they can't because it's AI.
Okay, well, confidence in the AI, I suppose, confidence in the solution to the extent that they can be.
I mean, they can't, right? How can HeyGen guarantee quality? I mean, this is what the entire language industry is built upon. So I'm not cautioning against the use. I'm cautioning that this is now becoming extremely widely accepted. So in the minds of the kind of non-language industry consumer, again, we spoke about this many times before, this is becoming a solved problem, that people perceive it as a solved problem. So let's see how the ripple effects are on the professional industry, on the enterprise grade industry on this.
But I wonder if you will get people picking these things apart, in the same way that with game localization, if there's a mistake in games, people are very quick to flag it and talk about it on social media. Same with, media localization, people talk about it. So you'd wonder if there is quite a lot of engagement with this sort of thing, you'd sort of hope that the community would moderate the content.
But a president saying, let me push back again, like the repercussions of a president saying the polar opposite of what he was actually intending to say in his own voice, lip synced.
You need some disclaimers saying, like what they do with machine translated annual reports. Like, this was automatically translated. For any discrepancies, please refer to the original German or Japanese or Spanish in this case.
They'll be caught up by 1% of the Twitter users or TikTok users or whatever users are consuming this, right? And the rest is like, oh, look, he speaks English flawlessly. It's his voice and the lips are moving perfectly. I don't know. It's just, it's frontier.
And then you meet him in
stuff.
person and he can't speak English. So you think,
I don't think Millet speaks English. Or maybe just, he should speak English. He's an economist. I'm sure he read through a bunch of English economist papers and stuff like that. All right, let's move on. It's one of the companies that's maybe powering some of the tech here is Systran, one of the oldest machine translation companies in the known universe, and they were acquired by a French data processing company called Chaps Vision. Tell us more.
Chaps Vision, yeah, big news coming out of Systran and Chaps Vision. That was last week. Systran, as you said, was acquired by the data processing company. And as you mentioned, Systran is one of the oldest machine translation providers known to the humankind. And as part of that, they have gone through quite a lot of different ownership cycles over the many years. But most recently, prior to the Chaps Vision acquisition, they were owned or majority owned by Stick Investments, a South Korean investment firm. Other investors held 42% of the companies, with SoftBank Korea, Korea Investment Partners, and Korea Investment Securities. And so we reached out to Vincent Godard, the CEO of Systran. He spoke a little bit about the process of, or the acquisition, saying that Systran's previous owners had actually initiated the process of finding new investors at the end of 2022. So this is a year plus in the making. He said that Chaps Vision Systran will now become the in-house knowledge and experience powerhouse around language processing for Chaps Vision. In terms of how, I suppose this might have played a part in how the acquisition came about. Systran and Chaps Vision had some shared clients, he said, particularly in the government space. And then talking about the benefits of the deal, Vincent was saying that Systran obviously has an international presence. They've got something like 70% of their revenues coming from abroad. Subsidiaries in the US, South Korea, and Japan, and all of that will help Chaps Vision to go global. And then the buyer, so interesting company, Chaps Vision, only founded in 2019. Since then, it seems to have done a total of 19, so nearly 20 acquisitions in, 4 years, and is aiming for revenues of around 200 million euros this year in 2024. They've also raised a bunch of funding, more than $200 million across 2 funding rounds. And one sort of interesting point was that among its investors are Qualiomm, which in turn people may know as being invested in Accolade.
Wow, you dug deep there. That's a couple of layers removed.
Couple of layers, but it's I don't know, the sort of French investment world, I suppose, is potentially quite small and makes sense to kind of pursue similar type investments, right? Data processing, translation services, machine translation.
So hang on. So Qualiomm is a private equity firm or some type of growth fund, and they own a stake in ChapsVision, and ChapsVision acquired Systrand, but Qualiomm also is a direct investor in Accolade.
Yeah. So Qualiomm within its portfolio has both Accolade and also ChapsVision.
Good for them. Now let's move down a couple of rungs on the scale to Translate One acquiring Balthazar Limited
in the UK. That's right. Translate One, also part of TrustPoint One, to go a level back. TrustPoint One being one of the largest legal service providers in the US. It has a division called Translate One that obviously, serves, yes, legal customers, but also provides a broader range of services across different sectors and segments. They acquired Balthazar here in the UK, small LSP focusing on technical translation for the German and UK markets. And it specializes, and I had to Google this, specializes in the industrial marketplace with a focus on HVAC, which, for those who are not aware, is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, as well as the renewable sectors. So some might argue a super niche, HVAC. But yeah, just over $1 million in revenues in 2022. So that's a small addition to their translation division. Previous acquisitions by Translate One have also included Comet Global in What Language, and also, now Balthazar in the UK. Then we had some comment from Translate One saying on the rationale that Balthazar aligns seamlessly with our European operations, significantly enhancing our capacity to offer exceptional customer service, especially in the highly technical translation sphere. So that's a small acquisition, US to UK.
All right. And then a little larger, $18 million Series B, raised by multilingual content generation company Contents.com. Nice domain. Obviously, it would have been greater to have content.com, but that probably would have cost a fortune. So contents.com, not too bad either.
Contents.com, yeah, not too bad. So this is a funding round, $18 million, Series B, from the Italian startup Contents.com. They were founded in 2020. They've had funding so far, to date, of 24 million, so including that latest 18 million. This latest round was led by Alchemia Capital and Thomson Reuters Ventures, with a couple of others also participating. So yeah, interesting acquisition of in previously they have also made several acquisitions in 2023 last year, one of which was an acquisition of an Italian LSP called Traduzione.it. Talking about the latest funding round, though, the CEO and founder was saying that they're planning on using the funds to obviously further develop the platform, also drive global expansion, and potentially for strategic acquisitions.
All right. Well, that was it for today's Slater Pod. Thanks again for checking in. Speak soon.